global warming?
I don't think this is as important a problem as other people do. That's the essence of it.
That's the bottom line. But tell me what you did and how you, I know, but tell me how you came to the conclusions, and have you changed your conclusions with new evidence? Just so we put on record what exactly you believed and said, rather than what we think you said.
What people are saying is really not true, even though at the end of that book I thought, well, people aren't going to understand this, so I'll write it in simple declarative sentences, and still people misstate it. What I said was, the Earth is definitely getting warmer. It's gotten, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 or 7/10 of a degree Celsius warmer in the last 100 years. We are increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's increased 30% in the last century.
We meaning humans, are doing this.
We human beings, yes. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. We would expect a 30% increase to have some influence on temperature. We're also doing lots of other things that affect the temperature as it's measured in a global temperature reading. So we're, cutting down the forests and doing croplands and all of that. What's basically called land use changes, or the urban heat island effect also has an effect, whether that's compensated for adequately in the way they do these calculations or not. And I said, my conclusion is that we will have 0.8 of a degree warming increase in the next 100 years. So I absolutely believe that warming is occurring, humans are involved, and where it's going to continue for the next 100 years.
Then what did you say that got everybody so upset at you?
I'm not a catastrophist. And I said one other thing too. I said, I think it is not likely that carbon dioxide is going to prove to be the primary driver.
What do you think will be the primary driver?
I think the sun, and I think there are miscalculations from urban land use, generally speaking.
Okay, now, and I'm sure you read every sentence of this new report by the UN that came out of Paris. Yes?
I haven't, actually, because I don't read the summary for policymakers. I read what the scientists say, not what the politicians say.
Tell me if I'm wrong. Every good scientist that I talk to says to me, 90% of the scientists agree on this. Most of the scientists say we all agree on this, that it is catastrophic. Tell me what's wrong about this. Oh, I know, you're bored by this or what?
Well, it's a lot of the people who talk about it, and I don't know who you're thinking of specifically, don't actually know very much, and I'm sympathetic to that, because for a long time I said, oh yes, global warming, it's a terrible problem, blah, 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 and only when I went and looked at the figures I thought, wait a minute, tell me again why this is a catastrophe. I see that it's something that's happening. I see that it's important. If you talk to Jesse Ausubel at Rockefeller University, he'll tell you we've been decarbonizing since the days of Abraham Lincoln and Queen Elizabeth, and we're going to continue to decarbonize. So whether or not this is going to happen fast enough for some people, it's a long-term 150-year trend. It's going to continue. You can't get agreement on almost anything, as far as I can tell. I mean, you can bring in 5 guys to talk about whether Antarctica, the core of Antarctica, is getting colder or not. Everybody agrees the peninsula, which is 2% of the mass, is getting warmer. And, they'll argue and argue and argue, and you'll come away after an hour saying, I don't know what the answer is, and that's the reality. Nobody really knows that. But what I said in my book, and I defy anybody to tell me I'm wrong, is I said nobody knows how fast it's going to get warmer, and nobody knows for sure what the various contributions of warming are. And I've predicted 0.8 of a degree, and nobody knows that I'm wrong.
And nothing has happened since you wrote that book to change your mind about your conclusions?
No. And what I do, I went to Germany in 2005, and it was a very hostile environment, and I gave a speech which consisted only of what was then the latest UN document, the third assessment report. And I put these graphs up, and I said to them, look, this is what they're saying. Is this okay with you? The audience got phenomenally silent. Because if you really start to say, okay, How do you validate the models? How is it done? Oh, we do it. There's a personal component of assessment. Well, really? Well, that's not okay for a drug. It's not okay for the maker to self-validate. We don't believe that. We don't think that's acceptable. It has to be done by somebody outside. We're talking about, if you listen to Bjorn Lomborg, $558 trillion globally to make this change. I think it's a good change to make. I think we will make it naturally. I think there's a lot of reasons to make it. I'm in favor of making it. The question is whether we should do it as a crash program for $558 trillion. And the notion of spending that money without really validating the bejesus out of the data is very bizarre to me.
Based on your reading of the data, you think, yes, we're getting warmer, but it's not going to lead to the catastrophe. That's what you've just said.
Right.
Do you have a reason that that's not the common perception?
I think the answer is that whenever you have something that's untied to the data, and when you have people adopting essentially philosophical positions, emotional positions, which the environment tremendously invites, how I feel as I walk through the woods and how I feel as I see clear cutting or something like that, very often from people who really don't understand these issues at all, then it's a very easy thing for an attitude to move in the direction of increasing demand or increasing hysteria or increasing concern, whether or not that's appropriate or not.
Al Gore. Now he's made a movie.
Yes.
Inconvenient Truth.
Yes.
And you say about what he says in that movie, what?
If I wanted to make a movie that said what he said, I could make a much better movie. There are a lot of things in that movie that are dicey and there's a lot that...
Okay, but let's just tell me what there is in that movie that's not dicey, but wrong.
Okay. Kilimanjaro, as an example of global warming, is wrong. 20-foot increase in sea levels or 40-foot increases, or whatever it is now, is wrong. And I think actually attitudinally it's wrong. I think that, the notion that this is a spiritual or religious issue for us is wrong. It is a scientific matter that we need to look at with as dispassionate a way of seeing it as possible. And if we don't do that, we're just expressing rank prejudices.
So Al Gore's movie and book express rank prejudices.
That's my view, sure. I mean, he's making arguments. I love the guy. He's making arguments for which there is no data. There just isn't. And he's got these fabulous pictures of the United States being inundated and I had somebody call me up who'd seen it and say, wow, I know you live at the beach sometimes and I have a beach house and, kiss them goodbye. I don't think so. I talked to two people, both very eminent, when I was working on the book, and both, they both attacked me subsequently because they were the leading people thinking about this, and I went to them and said, these are my problems. And I didn't get good answers back. But Charlie, the shortest version of this that I have is, I said, okay, we've had half a degree or 0.6 of a degree. It's not a crisis. What is everyone upset about? And the answer is, we're upset about the future. How do you know, because I believe the future is unknowable, how do you know what this is going to be? And their answer is, we have a computer model of global climate. And I say, climate, according to the last UN report, is a coupled, nonlinear, chaotic system. And they say, long-term prediction of climate is not possible. That's what they say. Direct quote. So I'm saying I don't think that a computer model cuts it. I'm not having it.
Think about what I've done here in this conversation. I said, tell me exactly what it is you believe and why you believe it, and what do you say to those people who have a different opinion? And you said they haven't looked at the data as well as I have and understand what I'm saying.
Most people I know haven't looked at the data at all.
And you think that the reason it's gotten such, it is now, in the opinion of many, has reached a critical mass, this judgment that it's more severe than you think it is because it has a certain Why does it have such currency?
Well, first of all, people are...
What is the way about America works that gives
always,
it such
it's
currency?
not America, it's human beings. They line up for the catastrophe. They're ready for it. They're ready for overpopulation. They're ready for resource depletion. They're ready for whatever it is. We're ready for bird flu. I mean, it's going to wipe us all out.
Bird flu is not a problem either?
It's a potential problem. Could be a very serious problem.
Yes, I thought so.
Yeah. But I mean, people they're ready. They're excited. They're excited about mad cow. I think it's for example, I've done this as a sort of test. Sit down at a dinner party and you say, the world is coming to an end. We have the most horrible things, and you get immediately the aroused attention of the table. Alternatively, you say, you know what, basically everything's good. The world's getting better.
Nobody cares.
No, they get angry. Or they turn away. It's not what we want to hear. We want to hear disaster. I'm often asked the question in the U.S., which is everyone disagrees with you. And it's actually something that Einstein was asked.
What about relativity or what?
No, I mean, he was... when...
no one agrees with you.
At a certain point, the Nazis had made this book of... because it was Jewish science, and 200 scientists had said that Einstein was wrong about relativity. And somebody asked Einstein, what do you think? There are 200 people that say you're wrong. And he said, all it takes is one person to prove me wrong. You see, consensus science is not science. All this consensus stuff is about politics. The real question is what is about the science. And that's why, I said, for example, if you got a good model, run it out 10 years and let's see you show it.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, then I don't think anybody's saying this is going to happen in 10 years. So, I mean...
No, but I'm saying if your model is good for 100 years, let's see it run for 10.
Okay,
tell me what the temperature...
Suppose they would turn around and say, okay, Michael, you prove we're wrong. Could you prove they're wrong in your judgment?
No, no one can prove it wrong. We're talking about what the future is. No one knows what the future is. Charlie, I have to tell you, if there's anything that's so weird for me, it's this, that you can talk to scientists and you say, what do you think of that shop corner with a neon sign that says psychic reading and somebody's going to tell you the future? And they go, oh, that's a fraud. That's a charlatan. No one can do that. You go, great. What do you think about telling me what the global temperature of the climate, predict the climate, no one can predict the weather for a month, the climate 100 years from now, and they go, oh, that's science, that's important. Pay $500 million for that, $1 billion. I mean, it's bizarre to me. No one can predict the future. The guy that I think you ought to get on this show is a guy named Reed Bryson, who was the leading climatologist of the 1970s and became very heavily committed in global cooling, predicted millions dead and so on. He's still around. He's still writing and commenting. And I think he's had the experience of having made a mistake. And if I'm right, then there's going to be enormously fascinating history because there's a whole band of intelligentsia and a whole band of scientists that are going to turn out to have made a significant major mistake. I actually look at it in terms of where we're going. I mean, if this doesn't work out, then science itself is going to be enormously injured. Are we, as Western societies, moving away from science? Are we having less and less interest in verified data? I mean, I start talking about verified data and people kind of, they seem uninterested in that. They seem uninterested in having real certainty about things and more interested in this sort of cohesiveness and consensus idea. Maybe we're moving in some other direction.